That ecology is the study of the interactions of living things with each other in their environments, that diversity matters, that in fact a high diversity equals a ecosystem more resistant to disturbance. Did I mention monoculture? I might have forgotten to talk about that yesterday. Did we talk about modern farming? Oh, good. Okay. Awesome. So ecology is basically the effort to try and understand those interactions, mostly with the goal of trying to help those ecosystems we depend on survive human disturbance. One of the ways we do that is with mathematical models. And those models, the inputs to those models have to be pretty complex. And then we kind of segued into this project where you're taking real life scenarios in ecology and trying to figure out the consequences in the chronological order that they happen. Okay, pair of terms now that I think you can probably puzzle out if you haven't heard them before. I wouldn't even really talk about them, except there's always a question in the state test. It's always something like, which of these is the abiotic factor? Is it the tree, the antelope, the bacterium, or the rock? And of course, you would choose the rock, because putting a in front of something means not that thing. And bio, you know the root, like biology, means living. So this means living versus non-living factors. And any organism is affected by both. That's the point of this, is that you have to consider both. You have to consider both the non-living stuff, the availability of, say, nutrients in the soil, the amount of sunlight, temperature, the precipitation, all those are abiotic factors. But then you also have to consider the other organisms. And sometimes that can be the hard part. Sometimes organisms affect each other in ways we don't totally get. Do you guys know what an aardvark is? That's an aardvark. Cute little buggers. They eat insects. This is a picture of me in Africa, which is the place where aardvarks live. Very proudly standing in front of, you know what it is that I'm standing in front of? Oh, the giant termite mound. What you can't see is what happened after the picture, which is that I was so excited to be in Africa, I just got there, that I turned around and kicked the termite mound, which was stupid. Why? You know, I had no idea. I thought it was going to be the most satisfying thing I'd ever done. Kick a big ant hill? You kidding me, Lan? They didn't. I probably should have thought of that, but they didn't.
Aren't those like super sturdy?
Yeah, that's the problem. Is that I almost broke my toe. I was limping for a couple of days. Because those things are made when termites chew up wood and then glue it together with their spit, which is basically like cement. The thing is rock hard. Most animals can't get in there to eat the termites. One that can, though, is that one. Aardvarks have these amazingly strong, sturdy claws, and they're able to knock holes in the base of termite mounds and get in there and just have lunch, man. They just eat until they're full, and then they leave, and they don't think anything else of it. But those holes that aardvarks knock in the bottom of termite mounds, and then the termites subsequently leave and build another one. There's like 15 different species in the African savanna that live in those holes that aardvarks make, that nobody else makes. And if you're trying to model an ecosystem like the African, like the Serengeti, and you didn't know that, your model wouldn't account for it, right? And you'd say, okay, well, the aardvarks go away, there'll be more termites. But that's fine. What else would happen? Well, it turns out what else would happen is if the aardvarks went extinct, there'd be 15 other species that didn't have a place to live. So sometimes abiotic factors are sneaky. I'm sorry, sometimes biotic factors are sneaky. Okay. And then abiotic factors are hard because that's what we think of. We don't always think about the amount of carbon in the air or what's going on with groundwater that gets drawn up by plant roots. So you got to be taking both into consideration is the point here. Other than that, it's a pretty simple concept. Okay, one more thing, which is we have to group things in ecology. It's all about interactions, so we're all about levels of grouping. So we're going to start small with our smallest groupings and then get kind of a wider and wider lens here. If we're just looking at one kind of organism, and I'm just looking at a group of that one kind of organism, what do we call that group? The what of red squirrels in the woods outside the school? Population. Good. Population is what we call it when there's a group of, and what do we call a kind of organism? What's the sciencey word for that? Good. Group of the same species in the same area. Perfect. So a group of that same species in that same area is a population. Okay, widen it out now to what's all the organisms of that kind. So what's a species? I guess is the question. What's a species? How do you tell? Where do you draw the line between one species and another? Is it all about appearance? You just tell by looking? Are a horse and a donkey the same species? Raise your hand if you think they are. How about a German Shepherd and a Chihuahua? Same species? You guys are very shy today. How do you know? It turns out that the German Shepherd and the Chihuahua are the same species. The horse and the donkey are not. So it must not be totally about looks, because I think those two pairs of organisms look about the same amount of different. So what is it? How do you tell? Lamp?
Based on like breeding.
Breeding?
Like,
what do you mean?
There's like a bunch of different breeds, Chihuahua and German Shepherd.
Okay.
But like a mule isn't like a breed of horse or anything.
Interesting. So breeds are sort of, they're right that that's sort of a subgroup of species. And so the fact that we use the word breeds for dogs, that's a giveaway.
Yeah, because you can like have two different breeds of a dog mate, and it'll be healthy. You can get,
so you're talking about breeding.
yeah, but then if you
It's
get
different than breed.
It's brand new for like, or you won't even get it.
You get something pretty cool when you cross a horse and a donkey. You know? What do you get, Riley? Oh, I thought your hand was up. Sorry. What do you get when you cross a horse and a donkey? If you do it the right way, the female has to be a horse, maybe. You do it the wrong way, you get a hinny, and nobody likes that. But if you do it the right way, you get a mule. Heard of a mule, right? They're awesome. They're like, okay, so horses are big and strong and fast. They're not very smart. And okay, they're not as smart as donkeys. Sorry, horse people. And they can't see their back hooves. So they're not real sure-footed on rocky terrain. Whereas a donkey, big old brain, smart. People say they're stubborn. They're not. They just remember the stuff you did to them. And they pay you back for it. And they have their eyes in a different place than a horse, so they can see their back hooves, which is why you see donkeys used as pack animals so much. And mules. Because a mule's like the perfect happy medium. It's bigger and stronger and faster than a donkey, but smarter and more sure-footed than a horse. But there's a problem. What's the problem with the mule? How do you get more mules?
You have to keep breeding horses and donkeys.
Yeah, mules, because there's a chromosomal mismatch between horses and donkeys. They reproduce successfully, but then the mules don't. The mules are still can't. So adjust our definition a little bit, and we will call a species organisms that can interbreed with each other and produce offspring that can reproduce. Widen it out. What do we call all the living populations in an area? Good. Community. We're not to ecosystem quite yet. Community is all the populations. Then if you add in all the non-living stuff, that's what we call ecosystem. Ecosystem includes abiotic factors. So we're widening out our lens here. Widen out one more step. And we find that given the same conditions, most importantly, temperature and rainfall, but also often terrain type, geology type stuff, given the same conditions around the planet, the same types of ecosystems keep popping up. We give them names, right? Like the rainforest, like the tundra, the taiga, the savanna. What do we call those types of ecosystems that we see again and again? Good. Biome. Biomes. You've explored those before. That was the 6th grade project or so. We will touch on them briefly in this unit, not for long. Finally, we widen all the way out to every place on Earth life can exist. It goes from a couple miles above the surface, where we find bacteria floating. Bacteria are kind of the ones at the edges of habitability, to a couple 100 feet down below the surface, again, bacteria, all the way around. What do we call that? Biosphere, exactly. Perfectly logical term for that, right? All the parts of Earth life can live. That's enough for today. I want to give you a big chunk of time to work on these scenarios. I just want to remind you that you have the internet. Sometimes you forget, I feel like. And you forget what magic powers you have, where you can Google whatever you want. And that there are things on these scenarios you don't know that you should look up. Like, just as an example, one that people often fail to look up has to do with water purification, and which ecosystem is very good at that. It's just a clue. Good? All right, remember you're presenting your slide, a slide that your group does tomorrow. The rest of the period is yours.